The stars were burning. Admiral stood at the bridge of his flagship and watched the orbital stations fall. Fire bloomed in the darkness of space like orange flowers. Each explosion meant thousands of lives lost. Each flash of light was a piece of humanity dying. He was 63 years old. He had been fighting this war for 40 years. And now, standing in the dim blue light of the command center, he knew it was almost over. "Admiral," said Captain Park, stepping up beside him, "the eastern defense grid has collapsed. Station 12 is gone." Did not respond. He kept watching the fire. "Sir," asked. "How many ships do we have left?" finally said. Checked his tablet. His face was pale. 847, maybe less. Closed his eyes. 800 ships, against the collective's armada of 40,000. There were not a single species. They were 7 different alien races, all united under one cold and logical purpose: the complete destruction of humanity. They had been chasing humans across the galaxy for 4 decades. They had burned every colony, every station, every ship they could find. Now humanity had nowhere left to run. The Sol system, Earth, Mars, Luna, was the last home they had. 12 billion humans waited for death. "When will they arrive?" asked. 72 hours, replied. "Maybe less if they push their engines." 72 hours, 3 days. That was all the time humanity had left. Turned away from the window, his body ached. His heart was tired, but he would not stop. He could not stop. "Get me a channel to the council," he said. "And find Doctor. Tell her I need to speak with her immediately." Nodded and hurried away. Looked back at the burning sky one more time. Then he walked toward his command chair, where he would plan humanity's final stand. Deep beneath the frozen surface of Sol, in a bunker that had not seen sunlight for 200 years, Doctor worked in silence. She was surrounded by ancient texts, not paper but crystal tablets that glowed with soft blue light. They had been found on Europa, buried under miles of ice. They were older than Earth itself. Had spent 15 years studying them. She had learned to read their strange symbols, and what she had discovered had kept her awake for months. The door behind her opened. She did not turn around. "Doctor," said a young woman's voice, "Admiral wants to see you. It's urgent." Finally looked up. Standing in the doorway was Lieutenant, a tactical officer, barely 25 years old. She had dark eyes and short black hair, and she carried herself like someone who had already seen too much death. "I know what he wants," said. "Help me carry these." She gathered the crystal tablets and placed them in a protective case, stepped forward to help. "What are these?" asked. "Our last hope," replied, "or our greatest mistake, I'm not sure which." The Council of Earth met in a chamber deep underground. 12 leaders from across the remaining human territories sat around a circular table. Their faces were tired. Their eyes were empty. They had been arguing for hours, but there was nothing left to argue about. Admiral entered the chamber, followed by Doctor and Lieutenant. The room fell silent. "Admiral," said the council president, an old woman named Myra, "what news do you bring?" "They will be here in 72 hours, said. "We have 800 ships against 40,000. If we fight, we die. If we surrender, we die slower. There is no path to victory." Silence filled the room. Some of the council members lowered their heads. One of them began to cry softly. "Then why are we here?" another council member asked. "Why waste time with meetings when there is no hope?" "Because," said Doctor, stepping forward, "there might be one option left." She placed the crystal tablets on the table. They glowed softly, filling the room with pale blue light. "These are texts from a civilization that existed before humanity," explained. "Before Earth, before our solar system was even formed. They speak of beings called the Primordials." "Primordials?" Myra asked. "Yes, they are not gods, not exactly. They are the architects of reality. They existed before the universe. When the universe began forming on its own, they stepped back and fell into a kind of sleep, but according to these texts, they can be awakened. The council members exchanged confused looks. "You're talking about summoning ancient cosmic beings," one of them said. "This is fantasy. This is madness." "Perhaps," admitted, "but we have tried everything else. Our weapons cannot stop our ships cannot outrun them. We have no allies, no reinforcements, no escape routes. This is all we have left." Admiral stepped forward. "What does this summoning require?" Hesitated. "The texts describe a ritual. It requires powerful psionics, people with mental abilities strong enough to reach across dimensions, and it requires a payment." "What kind of payment?" "Memories," said quietly. "The primordials feed on meaning, not matter. The participants must sacrifice their happiest memories, the most precious moments of their lives. Those memories are erased forever." The room fell silent again. Lieutenant, standing in the corner, felt her heart grow cold. She had spent years hiding her psionic abilities. She had kept them secret since her family was killed in the war. Now, she realized, she might have no choice but to reveal them. "And if we do this," the council president asked, "what happens? Will these primordials save us?" "I don't know," admitted. "The texts don't promise salvation. They only say that the primordials will observe, they will watch, and if they find us worthy, they may intervene." "May," Admiral repeated, "not will, may." "Yes." The council debated for another hour. Some called the plan insane. Others said it was their only chance. But in the end, when the vote was taken, it was unanimous. They had nothing left to lose. As the meeting ended, Admiral walked over to. "Can you really do this?" he asked quietly. Looked at the ancient tablets in her hands. "I've studied these texts for 15 years. I know the ritual, I know the words, but I've never actually done it. No one has, not for millions of years." "What if it fails?" Met his eyes. "Then we die like we were going to anyway, but at least we'll die knowing we tried everything." Nodded slowly. He looked at the tablets, then at the ceiling, as if he could see through the rock and metal, through the sky to the stars beyond. "Do it," he said. "Wake them up. Let them see what humanity is made of." Bowed her head. "Yes, Admiral." As she walked away, Lieutenant fell into step beside her. The young officer's face was pale, but her eyes were determined. "Doctor," said quietly, "I need to tell you something. I have abilities. I've hidden them for years, but if you need psionics for this ritual, I want to help." Stopped walking. She turned to look at, really seeing her for the first time. "Are you sure?" asked. "The cost is your happiest memories. You'll lose them forever." Thought of her mother's smile, her father's laugh, the day her little brother took his first steps. Then she thought of the fire, the screaming. "I'm sure," she said. "I don't want to forget the good things, but if forgetting means humanity survives, then it's worth it." Nodded slowly. There were tears in her eyes. "Then come with me," she said. "We have 72 hours to save our species." And together, they walked into the darkness, carrying the weight of humanity's last hope on their shoulders. The Antarctic sanctum was older than humanity itself. Doctor led her team through tunnels carved from black stone. The walls were smooth, almost glassy, and covered with symbols that glowed faintly in the darkness. These tunnels were not made by human hands. They had been here when the first fish crawled onto land. They had been waiting. 200 psionics followed behind. They were the strongest mental talents humanity had left. Men and women who could move objects with their thoughts, who could speak mind to mind across vast distances, who could see glimpses of possible futures. At the front of the group walked Elder Dew. He was 70 years old and blind. His eyes had burned out years ago when he pushed his powers too far, but he did not need eyes to see. His mind could sense everything around him better than any camera. "We are close," he said, his voice calm and deep. "I can feel it. Something is waiting ahead. Nodded, she checked her tablet, comparing the ancient map from the crystal texts to their current position. The central chamber should be just through here. They walked through a final archway and stopped. The chamber before them was enormous. It stretched upward farther than the eye could see, disappearing into darkness above. The floor was covered with circular patterns, rings within rings within rings, all carved with those same strange symbols. In the center of the chamber stood a pillar of pure black crystal. It was about 3 meters tall and hummed with a low, deep vibration that could feel in her bones. "This is the place," she whispered. "This is where we call them." Sergeant Bei Wu, head of the security team, stepped forward with his rifle raised. He was a large man with scars on his face and doubt in his eyes. "I don't like this," he said. "We're underground, surrounded by alien technology we don't understand, about to call something we can't control. This feels like a trap." "Maybe it is," admitted, "but it's the only option we have." Wu grunted but said nothing more. He positioned his soldiers around the chamber's entrance, ready for anything. "Turn to face the psionics. You all know what this will cost. The ritual requires you to give up your happiest memories. They will be erased completely. You won't even remember that you forgot them. Are you all still willing?" One by one they nodded. Some had tears in their eyes, others looked determined. A few were trembling. Lieutenant stood among them. She was trying not to think about what she was about to lose. Her mother teaching her to cook, her father carrying her on his shoulders, her little brother's laughter. Soon she would not remember any of it. Elder Du walked to the center of the chamber and placed his hands on the black crystal pillar. "Form the circle," he said. "Link your minds to mine, and when the moment comes, give everything you have." The psionics moved into position, forming concentric rings around the pillar. They joined hands and closed their eyes. Slowly, their minds began to connect. Watched from outside the circle. She was not a psionic. She could not participate directly. But she held the crystal texts in her hands, ready to guide them through the ritual. "The words are in an ancient language," she explained. "I will speak them aloud and you must focus on their meaning. Let the meaning flow through you and into the crystal. It will carry your message to whatever is listening." Elder Du nodded. "We are ready." Took a deep breath, then she began to read. The words were strange and heavy. They felt wrong in her mouth, like they were not meant for human tongues. But she spoke them anyway, her voice growing stronger with each syllable. As she spoke, the symbols on the walls began to glow brighter. The crystal pillar started to pulse with light. The air grew thick and heavy, pressing down on everyone in the chamber. The psionics felt their minds stretching outward, reaching beyond the chamber, beyond Earth, beyond the solar system. They were touching something vast and ancient, something that existed in the spaces between dimensions. And then the memories began to leave them. Felt it first, a warmth in her chest, like someone was pulling out a piece of her heart. She saw her mother's face flash before her eyes, clear and beautiful. Then it faded. She tried to hold on to it, but it slipped away like water through her fingers. She forgot her mother's face. She forgot her father's voice. She forgot the sound of her brother's laughter. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but she could no longer remember why she was crying. Around her, the other psionics were experiencing the same thing. Some of them screamed. Some of them whispered names they would never speak again, but none of them broke the circle. The crystal pillar was now blazing with white light. The entire chamber shook. Rocks fell from somewhere above. And then suddenly, everything stopped. The light faded, the shaking ceased, the air became still. Silence. Lowered the crystal texts, her hands trembling. "Did it work?" she whispered. Elder Du stood motionless at the center of the chamber. His face was blank. His mouth was slightly open. Then his eyes, his empty, burned-out eyes, began to glow with a cold, white light. When he spoke, it was not his voice. It was something older, something that made the air itself vibrate. "Why do you wake us?" the voice asked. "The universe has forgotten OURNAMES." Everyone in the chamber fell to their knees. The pressure of that voice was overwhelming. It felt like being crushed by the weight of 1,000 stars. Only remained standing. She gripped the crystal texts tightly and forced herself to speak. "Because we need your help," she said. "Our species is about to be destroyed. We have no other option." "Destroyed," the voice repeated. "Yes, we see it. The creatures you call VATH. They are coming to end you." "Yes. And you believe we should care. We have existed since before time. We have watched a billion civilization rise and fall. Why should yours be different?" Felt her courage failing. What could she possibly say to beings this powerful? What argument could she make? But before she could answer, another voice cut through the silence. "Because we refuse." It was Admiral. He was watching the ritual through a holographic projector, his image flickering in the corner of the chamber. His face was hard, his voice steady. "We refuse to die quietly," he continued. "We refuse to surrender. We will fight even though we cannot win. We will scream even as we burn, because that is what humans do. We do not go gently into the darkness." The chamber fell silent again. The glowing eyes of Elder Dew, or whatever was speaking through him, seemed to consider these words. "Interesting," the voice finally said. "Defiance without hope, struggle without purpose. This is irrational." "Maybe," replied, "but it's who we are." Another long silence. Then, incredibly, the voice almost seemed to laugh. "Very well, humans, you have amused us. We will observe your final stand. We make no promises. We offer no salvation, but we will watch." "And if we impress you?" asked. "If you impress us, then perhaps we will intervene. Perhaps, but do not expect miracles. We have not acted in eons. We may have forgotten HOW." The light in Elder Dew's eyes faded. He stumbled backward, and several psionics rushed forward to catch him. The connection was broken. The Primordials had retreated back to wherever they existed. Lowered herself to the ground, suddenly exhausted. Her entire body was shaking. Lieutenant walked over to her. The young woman's face was blank, her eyes empty. She had lost something precious, and she could no longer remember what it was. "Did we succeed?" asked. "I don't know," admitted. "They said they would watch, but they didn't promise to help. So we still have to fight." "Yes, we fight, and we hope that somehow we can impress beings older than the universe itself." Nodded slowly. She looked down at her hands, hands that felt strangely empty, though she could not remember why. "Then we fight," she said. "We make them remember us." Above them, somewhere far beyond Earth's atmosphere, the Armada continued its approach. 40,000 ships, coming to end humanity forever. And in the spaces between dimensions, ancient eyes opened for the first time in eons. The Primordials were watching. Now it was humanity's turn to perform. The Primordials did not speak again, but everyone could feel them watching. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Eternal Soul, studying the tactical display. Red dots filled the screen, thousands of them, pouring in from the edge of the solar system like a flood of blood. The Armada had arrived earlier than expected. 56 hours until they reach Earth," Captain Park reported. "They're moving faster than our projections." "Of course they are," muttered. "They smell blood, they know we're finished." But being finished did not mean giving up. Turned to his officers, his face hard with determination. "Send the signal to Commander Shin," he ordered. "Tell her it's time. The Ghost Fleet moves now." Far out in the asteroid belt, hidden among the tumbling rocks and frozen debris, Commander Shin received the message. She was a small woman with hair and cold eyes. She had been fighting the longer than most people had been alive. Her fleet, if it could be called that, was made up of damaged ships, converted cargo vessels, and anything else that could carry weapons and move through space. They called themselves the Ghost Fleet because they had been presumed dead a dozen times. They kept coming back. "All ships," announced through the communications channel, "this is your commander, the enemy is approaching. We cannot stop them. We cannot defeat them, but we can hurt them. We can make them bleed, and we can buy our people more time to prepare." She paused, looking at the faces of her crew. They were tired, they were scared, but they were ready. "Today we are ghosts no more. Today we make the enemy fear the dark. All ships attack." The Ghost Fleet erupted from the asteroids like wasps from a disturbed nest. 32 ships against the advance force of the Armada, 300 vessels sent ahead to clear the way. The battle was short and brutal. Ships darted between the enemy formations, launching missiles and then vanishing behind asteroid cover. They used the rocks as shields, as weapons, as traps. They moved in ways they had never seen before, reckless, unpredictable, almost suicidal. Within the first hour, the Ghost Fleet destroyed 47 ships. They responded by sending more vessels, 500, then 800. Watched her ships die one by one. The Crimson Dawn exploded under concentrated fire. The Silent Hope was rammed by a destroyer. The Iron Song went dark and drifted into the void. But for every ship she lost, she took 3 or 4 of theirs. "Commander," her first officer said, blood running down his face from a wound on his scalp, "we've lost half our fleet. We need to retreat." Looked at the tactical display. 15 ships left, nearly 200 enemy vessels destroyed. "Fall back," she ordered. "Scatter pattern, regroup at rally point 7. The survivors of the Ghost Fleet fled into the asteroid field, leaving behind the wreckage of friends and enemies alike. Allowed herself one moment of grief. Then she turned her attention back to the mission. She had bought humanity 6 more hours. It would have to be enough. On the Eternal Soul, Admiral received the report with a heavy heart. 17 ships lost, said quietly, but they took nearly 200 with them. "Commander." "Alive. She's regrouping what's left of the Ghost Fleet." Nodded slowly. "Good, tell her we won't forget this." He turned back to the main display. The Armada was still coming. The losses they had suffered in the asteroid belt were nothing to them, a scratch on the skin of a giant. But it was a scratch nonetheless, and scratches could become wounds, wounds could become scars, and scars lasted forever. "What's the status of the Stellar Lance?" asked. "Engineer reports it's 60% complete," replied. "He needs at least 30 more hours." "We have 56. "Yes, sir, but the final calibrations are dangerous. If something goes wrong." "Tell him to work faster. That weapon is our best chance." The Stellar Lance was humanity's secret project, a massive weapon capable of focusing the energy of the sun itself into a single devastating beam. If it worked, it could destroy hundreds of enemy ships in one shot. If it worked. Doctor was in her laboratory, surrounded by screens and data and the ever-present crystal tablets. She had not slept in 2 days. Her eyes burned. Her hands trembled. But she kept working because she had felt something after the ritual. Something had changed. "Doctor," said a voice behind her. Spun around, her heart pounding. Standing in the corner of her laboratory was nothing, empty space. No, not empty. There was something there, a shape made of darkness, a void in the shape of a person. "Who are you?" whispered. "I am what you called," the void replied. Its voice was soft like wind through dead leaves. "I am one of the Primordials. I wish to speak." His legs went weak. She grabbed the edge of her desk to keep from falling. "You came," she said. "You actually came. We said we would watch. I am curious. Your species is strange. You fight when you cannot win. You hope when there is no hope. Explain this to me." Stared at the void, trying to find words. How do you explain humanity to something older than time? I don't know if I can explain it, she admitted. It's just who we are. We don't fight because we'll win. We fight because surrender means accepting that we were never worth anything, that our lives, our dreams, our love, none of it mattered, and we refuse to believe that. But you will die. Yes, probably, but we'll die standing up. We'll die saying no. And maybe that's not rational, maybe it's stupid, but it's human. The void was silent for a long moment. Then it spoke again. I have watched 10,000 civilization rise and fall. Most of them surrendred when they knew they could not win. They chose survival over dignity. You do not. No, agreed, we don't. Interesting. The void began to fade. I will continue watching. Perhaps your species will show me something I have not seen before. Wait, called out. Will you help us? If we fight well, if we impress you, will you actually help? But the void was gone. Only silence remained. Stood alone in her laboratory, heart pounding, mind racing. The primordials were real. They were watching, and they were curious. Maybe that was something, maybe it wasn't. All she could do was keep working and hope. Across the solar system, the Armada continued its advance. At its center flew the largest ship in the fleet, a massive vessel 10 kilometers long, shaped like a black blade cutting through space. This was the flagship of the consensus, the unified mind that controlled the entire collective. The consensus was not a single being. It was a network of billions of minds linked together, all thinking as one. It had no emotion, no doubt, no mercy. It only had logic, and logic said that humanity must die. A transmission was sent to Earth on all frequencies. Humans of soul, the consensus announced in a voice that was neither male nor female, neither alive nor dead. Your extinction is mathematically certain. You cannot defeat US. You cannot outrun US. You cannot hide. Surrender now and your death will be painless. Resist and we will make it last for CNTURAS. On the bridge of the eternal soul, Captain looked at Admiral. Should we respond, sir? Thought for a moment. Then he smiled, a cold, hard smile that did not reach his eyes. Yes, he said, open a channel. He walked to the center of the bridge, straightened his uniform, and faced the transmission camera. This is Admiral of the United Human Armada, he said. I have received your message. Here is my response. He paused, and his smile grew wider. We will not surrender. We will not kneel. We will not beg. You think you have already won. You think mathematics and logic determine the outcome of war. Let me tell you something about humans. We are not logical. We do not accept what the numbers say. We have been dying since the moment we crawled out of the mud, and we have never, not once, gone quietly. He leaned forward, his eyes burning. Come and get us. We'll be waiting. And when this is over, the universe will remember the day humanity made you bleed. He cut the transmission. The bridge was silent. Then slowly the crew began to applaud. Somewhere in the spaces between dimensions, ancient eyes watched this moment. And for the first time in eons, something stirred in the empty void where the primordials existed. It might have been interest. It might have been admiration. It was definitely attention. The storm was coming, and humanity was going to meet it with fire in their eyes and defiance in their hearts. Win or lose, they would make sure the universe never forgot them. The sky above Earth was filled with death. 40,000 warships hung in the darkness like a wall of black steel. They stretched from horizon to horizon, blocking out the stars. Each ship was a weapon of destruction, carrying enough firepower to burn continents. Against them stood 800 human vessels. They looked like insects facing a hurricane. Admiral stood on the bridge of the Eternal Soul, watching the enemy formation through the main. His face was calm, but his heart was racing. All ships report ready, Captain Park said quietly. What about the civilian evacuations? Complete. Everyone who could be moved is now in the deep bunkers. 6 billion people underground waiting to see if they would live or die. Nodded. He had done everything he could. The Ghost Fleet had bought them time. The minefields were in place. The orbital defense platforms were armed. And somewhere in the outer system, Engineer was still working desperately to finish the stellar lance. But none of it would be enough. Knew that, everyone knew that. They were going to fight anyway. He activated the fleet-wide communication channel. His voice would reach every ship, every soldier, every corner of human space. "This is Admiral," he began. "In a few minutes we will begin the largest battle in human history. Most of us will not survive. I will not lie to you about our chances. They are small, but they are not zero. And as long as we breathe, as long as we fight, we keep hope alive." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "We are the children of Earth. We crawled from mud, reached for stars, and dared to call the void our home. They say we cannot win. They're right. But we can make them remember us forever. We can make them fear the next species that looks up at the night sky and refuses to kneel." He straightened his shoulders. "All ships attack positions for Earth, for humanity, for everything we have ever loved." The channel closed. Silence fell across the bridge. Then Captain stepped forward and saluted. "For Earth," he said. One by one, every officer on the bridge repeated the words, "For Earth." Admiral nodded once. Then he turned to face the enemy. "Begin." The Battle of Sol erupted across the entire system. The first wave of human ships charged directly at the formation, launching everything they had. Nuclear missiles streaked through space. Kinetic impactors slammed into enemy hulls. Plasma cannons lit up the darkness like artificial suns. They responded with overwhelming force. Thousands of energy beams cut through space, vaporizing ships in seconds. Human vessels exploded like fireworks, brief flashes of light, then nothing. But the humans did not retreat. Lieutenant sat in the tactical command center of the Eternal Soul, her eyes closed, her mind expanded. She was linked to dozens of other vessels through her psionic abilities, coordinating their movements like a conductor leading an orchestra. "Destroyer Group 3, break left," she ordered through the mental link. "Cruiser Wing 7, target their formation's weak point. Bomber Squadron 12, hold for my signal." Her mind was burning with the effort. Every death she felt, a flash of fear, a burst of pain, then silence. But she kept going because stopping meant everyone would die. The battle raged for hours. Earth's orbital ring, a massive structure circling the planet, became the focus of the fighting. The ring held humanity's last major defense platforms, and threw everything they had at it. Admiral watched sections of the ring collapse and fall toward Earth, burning like meteors. Millions of people had lived on those sections. Now they were gone. "We're losing the eastern sector," reported, his voice tight. "Station 7 is gone. Station 12 is about to fall." "Hold the central corridor," ordered. "That's where the main population centers are. We cannot let them break through there." But even as he spoke, he knew it was only a matter of time. Elder Dew was in the psionic command center, surrounded by his surviving students. There were only 60 left now. The rest had died in the ritual or been killed in the early bombardments. He could feel the enemy fleet like a dark cloud pressing against his mind. So much hatred, so much cold logic. They did not enjoy killing, but they did not hesitate either. To them, humanity was simply a problem to be solved. "Elder," one of his students said, "the enemy is breaking through the lunar corridor. If they take it, they'll have a direct path to Earth." Dew nodded slowly. He had known this moment was coming. "Link with me," he said to his students. "All of you, give me everything you have." "Elder, that will kill you." "I know," Dew smiled, his blind eyes looking at nothing and everything. "But it will also stop them, at least for a while." The students hesitated. Then, one by one, they joined hands and linked their minds to their teacher. Du felt their power flowing into him, their strength, their hope, their fear. He gathered it all together, building it into a single massive wave. Then he released it. The psionic shockwave exploded outward from the command center, traveling through space at the speed of thought. It hit the formation like an invisible hammer, disrupting their mental link with the consensus. 500 ships went dead in an instant. Their systems failed. Their crews collapsed. They drifted helplessly, unable to fight or flee. But the cost was terrible. Elder Du fell to the ground, his body already cold. Around him, 40 of his students lay dead or dying, their minds burned out by the effort. The survivors knelt beside their teacher's body, weeping. But they did not have time to mourn. The battle was still raging. Captain Park led the defense of the Luna corridor from the bridge of a damaged cruiser. The Eternal Soul had been crippled an hour ago, and he had transferred his flag to the first ship that would have him. "Sir, we've got 12 more enemy vessels approaching," his tactical officer reported. "Our shields are failing." Check the display. His ship was one of the last ones holding the corridor. If they fell, they would have a clear path to Earth. "How many ships do we have left?" "3, sir, including us." 3 ships against 12, and beyond those 12 were hundreds more. Thought about his family. His wife had died in the first year of the war. His children were in a bunker somewhere beneath Seoul, waiting and hopping. He thought about Admiral, still fighting on the remains of the orbital ring. He thought about all the people who would die if he failed. "All hands," he announced over the ship's intercom. "Prepare for ramming speed." The bridge went silent. "Sir," someone asked. "You heard me. If we can't stop them with our weapons, we'll stop them with our hull. Target the lead vessel. All power to engines." His crew did not argue. They had all made peace with death long ago. The damaged cruiser accelerated toward the enemy formation. They fired everything they had, tearing chunks out of the human ship. But it kept coming, trailing fire and smoke, refusing to die. At the last moment gave one final order: all hands abandon ship. Escape pods launched in every direction as the cruiser slammed into the lead destroyer. The explosion destroyed both ships and damaged 3 others. Spod tumbled through space, battered by debris, but he was alive. Somehow he was alive. He watched through the pod's tiny window as his ship died in a blaze of glory. Then he turned his attention to the surviving human forces. The Luna corridor was held, for now. On Earth, the first ground troops began to land. They came down in massive, each one carrying thousands of soldiers. The alien troops were tall and thin, with skin and black eyes that showed no emotion. They moved with perfect coordination, spreading across the cities like a flood. But the humans were waiting for them. Civilians who had never held a weapon in their lives picked up rifles and took positions in the rubble. Old veterans came out of retirement to lead resistance cells. Children ran messages between barricades while their parents fought and died. The streets of Seoul became a battlefield. Every building was a fortress. Every corner was an ambush. They had expected easy victory, but instead they found themselves fighting for every meter of ground. In the command bunker beneath the city, what remained of Earth's leadership watched the battle unfold. "They're taking heavy casualties," one general reported. "But so are we. At this rate, they'll still overwhelm us within days." Doctor stood in the corner watching the screens. She had not slept in 3 days. Her mind was exhausted, but she could not rest. Because somewhere out there, the Primordials were still watching. She could feel their attention like a weight on her shoulders. They were judging humanity, measuring their courage, their defiance, their will to survive. She just hoped it would be enough. Above Earth, Admiral stood on the shattered bridge of a destroyed station. His uniform was torn. His face was covered in blood, but he was still standing. "Admiral," a young officer called out, "we've received word from engineer. The stellar lance is complete." Felt a spark of hope flicker in his chest. "When can it fire?" "Immediately, sir, but there's a problem. The targeting system was damaged in the battle. Someone needs to manually aim the weapon from the control platform. It's a suicide mission." Closed his eyes. Of course there was a price. There was always a price. "Who's volunteering?" he asked. Before the officer could answer, a familiar voice came through the communication channel. "I'll do it." It was Lieutenant. "Lieutenant," said slowly, "do you understand what you're offering?" "Yes, sir." Her voice was calm, steady, certain. "My mind is the only one fast enough to aim the weapon properly. I can link with the targeting system directly, and I've already given up my memories. I don't have much left to lose." Wanted to argue, he wanted to find another way, but he knew there was none. "Lieutenant," he said formally, "on behalf of humanity, I thank you." "Don't thank me yet, sir. Let me do my job first." She cut the channel, and Admiral turned back to watch the battle. Somewhere in the distance, a single shuttle was making its way toward the stellar lance platform. Humanity's last hope was in the hands of a young woman who could no longer remember why she was willing to die. But she was willing, and that was what mattered. The longest night was almost over. One way or another, dawn was coming. The burning cities of Earth glowed red beneath the night sky. Admiral had been moved to the emergency command bunker beneath Seoul. The ceiling above him shook constantly as weapons struck the surface. Dust fell from the walls. Lights flickered on and off. He was wounded badly. A piece of metal had torn through his side during the evacuation from the orbital station. Medics had patched him up, but he refused to lie down. He stood at the command table, watching the tactical display, refusing to quit. "Status report," he demanded. An officer, young, exhausted, covered in dust, stepped forward. "We've lost 90% of our fleet, sir. The orbital ring is completely destroyed. Forces now control the skies above every major continent. Ground fighting continues in 300 cities worldwide." 90%. Let that number sink in. 800 ships reduced to less than 80. Millions of soldiers dead or dying. The greatest military humanity had ever built, broken in a single day. But they were still fighting. That was something. "What about the stellar lance?" he asked. "Lieutenant has reached the control platform. Engineer reports the weapon is fully powered. We're just waiting for her to acquire targeting lock." Nodded. He wanted to contact to say something to her before the end. But what could he say? "Thank you. Good luck." Neither seemed enough. Instead, he turned to look at the ceiling, imagining he could see through the rock and metal to the stars beyond. "Come on, Lieutenant," he whispered. "Show them what we're made of." Lieutenant stood alone in the control room of the stellar lance platform. The room was small and cold. A single chair sat before a massive control console. Through the viewport she could see the battle still raging, flashes of light, explosions, ships dying in silence. And beyond the battle, she could see the heart of the armada. Thousands of ships clustered together in a tight formation, protected by layers of escorts and defense screens. In the center was the flagship of the consensus, the massive blade-shaped vessel that commanded the entire fleet. That was her target. Sat down in the control chair and placed her hands on the neural interface pads. She felt the connection activate, linking her mind directly to the weapon's targeting system. The stellar lance was enormous, a platform the size of a small moon, built around a focusing array that could channel the raw energy of the sun. When fired, it would unleash a beam of plasma so hot that it would vaporize anything in its path. But the beam had to be aimed perfectly. At this distance, even a fraction of a degree off target would mean missing entirely. That was why was here. Her psionic abilities allowed her to process information faster than any computer. She could feel the movement of every ship, predict their positions, adjust the targeting in real time. But maintaining that level of focus would destroy her mind. The feedback from the weapons systems was too powerful for any human brain to survive. She knew this, she accepted it. Targeting system online, she said into her communication link. Beginning acquisition. Her mind expanded outward, touching the weapon, feeling its power. It was like holding the sun in her hands, beautiful and terrible and overwhelming. She began to aim. In the command bunker, Doctor watched the tactical display with tears in her eyes. She could see shuttle on the screen, a tiny dot next to the massive weapon platform. She could see the power levels rising as the stellar lance charged. And she could feel something else, a presence beside her watching. She turned and saw a figure standing in the corner of the bunker. It was a woman in ancient Korean clothing, her face beautiful and timeless. But her eyes were wrong, too deep, too old, like windows into infinity. "You're one of them," whispered, "the Primordials." "Yes," the figure replied. Her voice was soft but seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I wish to speak with you before the end." "The end? You mean we're going to lose?" The Primordial tilted her head. "I mean the end of this battle, the end of this moment. All things end, child. The question is how THEY end." Stepped closer to the ancient being. "Why did you take a human form? Why speak our language? If you don't care about us, why bother?" The Primordial was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, softer, almost uncertain. "I do not know. I have watched your species 4 days now. I have seen your fear, your pain, your grief. But I have also seen your courage, your love, your refusal to surrender. It is strange." "Strange how?" "I have existed since before time. I have seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a beach. THEY all behave the same way. When they cannot win, they surrender. They accept their fate. But you do not. You burn brighter as you die. You scream louder as you fall. It should be foolish. It should be pointless. But somehow, it is beautiful." Felt tears running down her cheeks. "Then help us, please. If you find us beautiful, if you find us worthy, help us survive." The Primordial looked at her with those infinite eyes. "I cannot make promises for all of us. We are old beyond your understanding. We have not acted in eons. Some of my kind believe we should never act again. But I will tell you this." She stepped closer, and her voice dropped to a whisper. "What your lieutenant is about to do, the sacrifice she is making, we see it. We feel it. It matters to us. Perhaps more than you know." Then she was gone, fading into nothing like smoke in the wind. Stood alone, trembling. She turned back to the tactical display, just in time to see the stellar lance activate. Lieutenant felt the power surge through her mind. The weapon was ready, the target was locked, all she had to do was fire. But in that final moment, something strange happened. A memory surfaced, not one of her lost memories, but something new. She remembered the faces of her crew during the battle. She remembered the children in the evacuation shelters, looking up at her with hope in their eyes. She remembered Admiral's words about refusing to kneel. She could not remember her own past anymore, but she could remember why she was fighting. For everyone who ever looked up at the stars and dreamed. For everyone who refused to accept that the darkness would win. For humanity. "Firing," she whispered. She pulled the trigger. The stellar lance erupted with light. A beam of pure solar fire shot across space, cutting through the void like a blade through paper. It passed through the defensive screens like they were not there. It burned through escort ships without slowing down. And then it hit the heart of the enemy formation. 4,000 ships vanished in an instant, vaporized by the unimaginable heat. The flagship of the consensus, 10 kilometers of black steel, was reduced to atoms. The unified mind that commanded the collective was destroyed. For a moment, silence fell across the entire solar system. Then the human fleet erupted in cheers, but did not hear them. The feedback from the weapon was too much. Her mind was burning, collapsing, dying. She could feel herself slipping away piece by piece. With her last ounce of strength, she activated her communication link. "For Earth," she whispered, "for everyone who ever looked up." Then she smiled. The targeting platform exploded as the weapon systems overloaded. Lieutenant was gone. In the command bunker, Admiral watched the explosion on the tactical display. He did not speak, he did not move, he just stared at the screen where signal had been. Around him, officers were celebrating. The consensus was destroyed. The heart of the enemy fleet was gone. They had done the impossible, they had hurt the invincible armada. But could not celebrate, he could only mourn. "Admiral," an officer said carefully, "they are regrouping. They still outnumber us 20-1. Their secondary commanders are taking control." Closed his eyes, of course. The battle was not over. The enemy was wounded, not defeated. They still had the numbers to crush humanity completely. "How long until they resume the attack?" he asked. "Minutes, sir, maybe less." Opened his eyes. He looked at the faces around him, exhausted, wounded, afraid, but still standing. "Then we keep fighting," he said. "We keep fighting until we can't fight anymore. Lieutenant gave her life to buy us a chance. We will not waste it." He turned back to the tactical display, ready to give orders for the final phase of the battle. But before he could speak, something happened. Every screen in the bunker went white. Every speaker crackled with static. And then a voice spoke, a voice that was not human, a voice that echoed across every frequency, every channel, every corner of the solar system. A voice that the universe had not heard in billions of years. The Primordials were ready to speak. And everything was about to change.